Good morning, kiddos. I hope you are having a great day. I'm cranking through those E-days. You guys are doing a great job so far, so keep it up. So today we're going to dive a little bit more into cells and some of the organelles that you've read about throughout articles the past couple days. So you'll notice if you go to the Miami East website, there is a notes page that you can print out and follow along with. You could make your own chart, however, you do have to label some parts of the cells, so you're definitely going to want that printed version if you can, because you'll need that diagram to be able to label. So, reminder as we go through, you can pause, rewind, go forward as much as you need to be able to fill out each part of the chart. You're just filling out the middle column, so you'll notice there's the name of the organelle, the blank middle column, and then a picture that kind of connects what the organelle is like. You just need to fill out the middle column, which is basically a definition or description of what the organelle does. So here we go. So your first organelle is the cell wall. It surrounds the plant cell. I would definitely make sure that you note that it's just a plant cell. And it maintains the shape and the structure. So you'll see, as it's outlined in blue here, that greater or thicker green around the outside, that is your cell wall. So cell walls are only in plant cells, providing extra shape and structure. And remember, plant cells. So it's kind of like a wall to a building. Think about the walls of a building, hold it up. They hold the structure inside as well. Without the walls, we wouldn't have a building. Same thing with that plant cell. Without that extra structure, it wouldn't allow the plant to have structure. Alrighty, your next organelle is the cell membrane. So the cell membrane is found in both plant and animal cells, and its job is to control what goes in and out of the cell. So I like to think of it as a balloon, kind of. So a balloon has a membrane, that latex that makes up the balloon. Over time, eventually air will go out through the membrane. That's why eventually our balloon becomes deflated. So in a cell, it's very similar. It's going to control what comes in, so things like water or nutrients, but it's also going to let some things out. So I like to think of it as like the gatekeeper, or the key to get in and out of a factory, or the kingdom is kind of a way to think of it. It's trying to keep the good things in and bring more things in, like I said, water, nutrients, and then get rid of the things that the cell might not need anymore. Your next organelle is the cytoplasm. So it's the gel-like fluid that supports the cell organelles and holds them in place. So you'll see here the blue arrows, and I'll kind of outline them again. It's pointing to all of that orange kind of gel-like fluid in the cell that the organelles, which are the gray, are sitting down in. So I like to think of it a little bit like Jell-O. So if you look at the next part, so think of like a fruit cup that has Jell-O that's going to hold the fruit in place. Think of the Jell-O part as the cytoplasm, and then the fruit as the organelles. I know a few students last year like to think of like plasm or plasma as the gel kind of structure. That's a great way to remember it too. So that is your cytoplasm. It's in both plant and animal cells. Your next one should look a little bit familiar from atoms. It is the nucleus. So the nucleus is our control center for the cell, kind of like our brain. So the nucleus is this entire thing. The dot in the middle, or this circle, is called the nucleolus. You don't need to know that organelle or its function. You'll look at that as you get into high school biology. So as I said, it's very similar to the brain for our body. Our brain is sending out messages or signals to all of our organs, kind of like the organelles in a cell, to make sure they're functioning properly, to make sure that they have the correct nutrients or that they're working correctly. They also know if they're not working correctly, they're also sending signals to the nucleus as well. Our next one is the endoplasmic reticulum, kind of a big, fun, long new word. So it's also called the ER, like you'll see up here. It is where materials are processed and moved around inside the cell. So one great note that you could leave for yourself, a lot of kids like to remember this as everyday roads. So different materials are being moved all throughout these roads into the cell, into different organelles. So like I said, kiddos like to think of them as everyday roads or the highway. So it's like a highway that's transporting materials around the cell. There are two different types of endoplasmic reticulum. We'll look at both of them in a little bit, but you might want to note that you have both a smooth and you also have a rough. And when we look at our diagrams, you'll see it's really obvious which one is smooth and which one is rough. The smooth does not look bumpy, and the rough does because it has ribosomes attached, or little proteins that we'll talk about in just a second. Next, you have your Golgi bodies. This is also sometimes called the Golgi apparatus. So if you ever see that term, it's the same thing. Don't let that freak you out, but we'll tend to call it the Golgi bodies. So they package, transmit, and send out cellular material throughout the cell. It does look kind of similar if you look to the endoplasmic reticulum, but there's only one Golgi body. So as we look at the diagram, it'll make a little bit more sense as to which one is which. And I like to think of it as the Amazon of the cell, or the post office. So think of a post office or Amazon. They're packaging and transmitting mail or packages out into the cell, whatever you order. Amazon takes, packages up, and sends it on to where it needs to go. So the Golgi bodies are doing the exact same thing, making sure proteins and nutrients and other cellular materials get to the correct place. Your next organelle is your vacuole. So your vacuole is a storage space for water, waste, food, and other cellular material. So I think of it kind of like a warehouse or a storage space. There is just one large one in plant cells, and you'll see that, and then there are multiple small ones in animal cells. In plant cells, having a larger vacuole just provides a little bit more structure, kind of like those cell walls, or that cell wall in that plant cell. So another way to think of it, think about containers when you pack your lunch or when you pack up leftovers after supper. So things like baggies, containers, your water bottle, they're all storing food or water. And think of like a trash bag storing waste for the cell. Our next organelle is the mighty mitochondria. It is the powerhouse of the cell. So its job is to take in food and to break it down to make energy for the cell. I always think they look a little bit like kidney beans or jelly beans, kind of. There's usually multiple in a cell. And remember that it has to go through lots of different chemical reactions to break down our food. As we talked about in class, when I eat a cheeseburger, I don't get a cheeseburger out. That's because my body has to break it down. And the mitochondria play a great part in doing that to be able to provide energy for your cells. So kind of like a battery, it's storing energy just like chemical reactions happening in a battery to give you energy. Same thing is happening in mitochondria. So remember the mighty mitochondria. Your next organelle is the lysosome. There are multiple lysosomes in a cell, and its job is to remove waste. So it's going to digest, break it down, and then also remove it out of the cell, anything that the cell might not need anymore. And it's kind of like, and a great way to remember it, Lysol. So lysosome's job is to clean the cell, just like we would use Lysol spray or cleaning spray to clean our house or clean the classroom. It's trying to remove any waste that the cell does not need. So lysosome and Lysol is a great way to remember that one. Your next one is only found in a plant cell, just like your cell wall, and we'll talk about why in just a moment. So its job is to make food for the plant cell. Remember, I would definitely make a note, plant cell only. And think about, why would a plant cell have to make food for itself? Well, we as animals, is what we're considered, can go out, we can hunt for food. We are fortunate now that we can just go to the grocery store and buy food, but plants are anchored down by their roots and obviously can't do that. So they have to make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. I know you looked at this a little bit in 5th grade. We've touched on it just a couple times when we talked about sugar or glucose. So you have your chloroplast that's making food for the cell. You also have the chlorophyll. And really the big thing to know is just the chlorophyll fills the chloroplast. It's what's going to give that green color. It's absorbing sunlight and taking in carbon dioxide to make glucose or sugar. So it's kind of like the chef. It's making food for that plant cell because remember, plants cannot go get their own food to be broken down as well. Then you have your ribosomes. Ribosomes are in both plant and animal cells. Their jobs are to make protein for the cell. So they really do kind of look like tiny dots all throughout the cell. This is also, and I'm going to note, what makes the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So remember I said one endoplasmic reticulum looks really bumpy. That is why, because it has ribosomes attached to it, and that is my rough endoplasmic reticulum. So remember, proteins help build muscle. They're going to help keep the cell structure, just like your muscles help keep your body together. They connect your bones, that connective tissue and muscles as well. So the very last thing we're going to look at before we label your diagram real quick is the difference between a plant and animal cell. And my iPad is dying, so we're going to go through quick. So plant cells have cell walls and chloroplast. If you remember up top, I said make sure that you note which ones are just found in plant cells, while animal cells do not. And then one kind of fun fact for you as we look at cells over the next few days, most plant cells tend to be rectangular in shape, where most animal cells, remember we are considered animals, are round. So if you've ever seen like a picture of a white blood cell or a red blood cell, those would both be considered animal cells and are typically round. So last thing we're going to do is label your cell. Both cells have a lot of the same organelles. Just remember those plant cells have 2 extra. These pictures are both a cell cut in half. So it's like we're looking at half of a cell. It's almost like you would take 2 of those fruit jello cups and put them on top of each other as a whole cell. And then when we take them apart, we have 2 halves of the cell. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start in the top right corner, kind of like a clock. So that pink all around the entire outside of an animal cell is your cell membrane. We're going to work our way down around, like I said, like a clock. If you notice, you have 3 of these pink kind of jelly bean looking organelles. That is my mighty mitochondria. Next, you have 2 of these kind of greenish organelles, and realize the coloring on here is not the same as what you would necessarily see in a cell. We're just making it stand out a little bit. So you have 2 of these that store water, food, and waste. They are your vacuoles. Next, you'll see on both sides of the nucleus, you have this brown organelle. One appears bumpy because ribosomes are attached. So this bottom one is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And we're going to jump up to that top brown one real quick, which is just the opposite. It is your smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Alrighty, and then as we work our way down, we have these small black dots all over the cell. It's the same thing that's attached to our rough endoplasmic reticulum. It is the ribosomes that are going to create protein. Next, we're pointing to all of the yellow that is filling the cell. All of the organelles are kind of floating in this gel-like organelle, and that is my cytoplasm. Then we have 2 left. That big pink circle in the center controls the rest of my cell. Think about it like your brain. It is the nucleus. Alrighty, then last but not least, like the Amazon of the cell, we have our Golgi body. So remember, it's going to package and ship out any materials out into the cell to the other organelles. So we have completed our animal cell. Our plant cell is going to look really similar, so we're going to go ahead and start with that. We're going to do the same thing as start in this top right corner and work our way around like a clock. So you'll see in your plant cell you have that thicker green wall around the outside to provide structure. That is your cell wall. So remember, the cell wall is going to be on the outside. This tends to trick people up, so be careful, which means that pink around the inside is my cell membrane. Then next, as we work our way down, we have those three, kind of like a jelly bean. That is my mighty mitochondria. Then next we have one big storage tank, our vacuole. Then we're pointing to all of that green space filling the cell. Remember, that's our gel-like organelle that everything else floats in. That is our cytoplasm. Then down in the bottom, it's a little bit hard to see, but pointing to all of those black dots throughout the cell that are also attached to my endoplasmic reticulum, those are my ribosomes. Remember, they're going to create proteins. Next, we have an organelle we didn't see in our animal cell. It's because the plants have to create their own food through photosynthesis. It is our chloroplast. Then we have our big pink, kind of like a brain in the middle of your cell. That is your nucleus. Remember, it's going to control all of the organelles, make sure everything's running properly. On the left side of the nucleus, we have our rough endoplasmic reticulum. Which means on the other side of the nucleus over here, we have our smooth endoplasmic reticulum. And then last but not least, our Amazon of the cell that packages and ships things out, our Golgi body. So those are all of your cell organelles. Make sure that you label them correctly because we'll use them over the next few days. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or comment on Google Classroom. Remember, you can rewind, replay as much as you need to. And I hope that you have a wonderful day, guys. I hope I see you soon. Have a great day.